We'll see. All right, well, my name's Anthony. I recognize some of you from the time that I was here. Some of you came back and left, and it's good to see some familiar faces. She worked with me at Mercedes for a little bit, so we have some history over there as well.
We're giving her back.
Awesome. Good. Great. Well, like Mojo said, I started, I've been in car sales my whole adult life, basically. I started at this dealership the day before I turned 19. It was my 19th birthday right after I started, and I was the BDC assistant to Louie, who's sitting right over there. That was before Kumbi, so that short little desk in the showroom, that was my home base for about 1 year before I moved to the floor. And when I was 20 years old and my first year on the floor, I did, in terms of income, $189,444.22. I just checked last night. That's why it's so specific. My second year, I did a little bit over 150K in income. My third year, I took a little break for character development. Thank you, Typhoon. I don't see him in the room right now. But I came back my fourth year in 2024 and worked about half the year. I did about 81 before I left over to Mercedes-Benz. I took a promotion for finance manager over there. At the time, I had no idea that I was actually signing up for more of a hybrid sales manager, finance manager position, because our GM was basically never in the store. So I was helping run the front with our one other sales manager and then handling the back myself for most of that time. And it was a pretty rough situation to start. So I got there in August of 24. In July of 24, the store had done 3 sales, 3 units out in July. And those are real numbers, I remember checking. So they were literally doing single digits. I had people, I mean, there was a reputation at the store. When I was talking about whether I should go over there or not, people were telling me, don't, you're crazy. That place is where people go to die in terms of sales. But I made the jump anyway. For the record, he did say I should go. And in October, so this was in July, we did 3. We hit 70 units in October. So we had a pretty major jump. And that was obviously due to a pretty great team effort. But being involved up there in the front, and we had a bunch of like under 21 salespeople that we had all hired with no experience. It was kind of a crazy situation we were in. But we were able to pull it off and turn it around. We averaged about 50 units a month after that, ongoing up until a little bit before I left. So I was there in that hybrid position for about 18 months before I got promoted to GSM officially. And then I took over the front and the back in a kind of more formal fashion. And I just left last month, so like 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks ago now, to start my own company where I do consulting training for dealerships and salespeople. So just getting that off the ground. I'm really excited for the opportunity to be here. Thanks for giving me some time. And I'm gonna try and give as much value as I can in the amount of time that I have today. So this isn't a pitch, but it's gonna be relevant. The system that I teach and that I've kind of come up with through my escapades in the industry is 3 pillars. So I teach first, optimize, and then mobilize, and then maximize. So the way that I have this broken down and organized, yes, is, I know, kind of a nice rhyming scheme. I spent way too much time coming up with that. Anyway, optimize is where I teach a structure and just a daily routine. This is really important to have some sort of process and formula for your sales. That way you can build on top of it. This is all about getting a system in place that you can follow and repeat. And if you don't have that, you can't do anything else. So I start there, just foundations. What do we do when we meet a customer and we can walk through the same thing every single time? Mobilize is where we actually go out into the market and capture new business and bring it back. This is all about growing your pipeline, how to prospect, creating a whole new stream of business on top of what the dealership is already providing you. And that way you can just multiply your opportunities and not have to rely just on walk-in traffic. So this is a huge part of what I teach. And then maximize is all about growing your paycheck. So this is about improving the conversion ratios on the phone and in person, which basically means just setting more appointments and closing more deals with actual customers, and about maximizing your paycheck. So dealerships everywhere have a lot of different kinds of pay plans. Some salespeople are paid on back-end products. I know you guys here get really good kind of spiffs and commissions for trade-ins is a big thing here, right? So that's where I would kind of narrow down and focus in on what specifically you guys are getting paid on that's going to improve your paychecks. Spiffs, weekend challenges, whatever it is that's going on. So this is all about the money, the volume, and then the foundation. Now, to achieve these results, what this looked like for most of my career was about 10% here, 80% here, and then another 10% down here. So when I was on the floor, I was mostly doing prospecting in order to get these figures, especially that first year, I took almost no ups. I actually counted in 2024, I didn't have the records, but I tracked the source of every single deal that I took for the first half of 24 when I was here, and I did 11 ups on the floor to get to this income. So it was mostly just prospecting, especially at Mercedes-Benz when we were there. And that was mainly just due out of necessity. Coming off of 3 units, our only opportunity to actually increase business was through going out and grabbing it because we didn't have the volume to actually support it, right? Now, I was gonna talk about this just because it's been my bread and butter and I've got a lot of experience with it, and it's where most salespeople, like other clients that I have across the country already, are in the same situation. Just most dealerships in the country are bottlenecked here in volume in terms of like how many deals can I get in front of, how many customers can I get in front of in order to increase the income. So that's what I was planning on doing. I had material prepared for that. I talked to Mojo yesterday, and he informed me that you guys are in a little bit of a unique situation, which is that apparently you have so much traffic at the moment that your bottleneck is actually on conversion and not on volume. Yes, and I know that everyone on an individual level would definitely benefit from more deals. That's just always going to be true. But based off of what you told me, it's probably more something like this in terms of what you guys would need to focus on in order to really maximize your opportunity. So most of your unrealized revenue is sitting in what you already have here or coming in the door. And that's, okay, this is not normal. I don't think you guys understand how uncommon and lucky you are to be in a situation where this is your problem and not the other way around. Because everyone that I'm talking to, I mean, it's rough out there. I didn't realize it when I was on the floor either, but after going through this debacle and trying and pulling it off, like the grind that most people have to go through in order to actually try and move their career forward and their income is really difficult and long. And it's because advertising and traffic is just not there at a lot of places. But here it is. You guys are set up in like, you have like at the holy grail of car sales at this store and in this state. You're at the biggest dealership in the state. You sell the most cars, as far as I'm aware, or at least you're close to it. You have a monopoly on one of the most popular products in the state, which is crazy that there's no one else selling Toyotas, which so many people want. You have management that is just laser focused on getting you guys the biggest paychecks possible. The gross in your inventory is ridiculous. I'll tell you, we weren't making as much money selling what we were per unit as you guys here. You've got an amazing finance team that's super efficient and supports you through the end of the deal. You've got a super big, efficient sales department. You have a crack shot accounting department, which is huge. You guys don't even realize how much they're helping you on the back end. That's also something that you're taking for granted. Having dealt with a less efficient accounting department, it makes your life 100 times harder. So just having them in the background helping you out is huge. My point being that you have this entire structure, a whole pyramid underneath you that is literally setting you up for the best possible level of success. And if you're not taking advantage of it, it's a stupid spot to be in, to just basically sit back and coast because of how much opportunity you have coming in the door. So I was totally unprepared in terms of like how I was thinking about coming into this to hear that. So it actually caught me off guard because that is not the case in like 9 out of 10 other situations. So I want to talk about this first pillar here, optimize, because I think I have an inkling that that's where most of the value is going to come from what I speak about today. Because in my experience, having a system and a structure that's really locked down and repeatable is where a lot of people, at least the ones that I've worked with so far when I was teaching my team, it's where we started. And a lot of people don't have that in place, especially if you're in a situation like where you're at, where it's really easy to sell cars by accident, which I think is the case. When I was here, I saw it with some people on the floor. But if you have so many deals coming in that they're just spilling over and you're like losing them left and right and still closing like everything else, and you're getting fat paychecks just based off of that, it's really easy to just walk into deals without trying to, if that makes sense. So you can be much less intentional and still have a huge amount of success just because of the situation that you're in here. So you can really improve on that by actually adding some sort of structure. And I know I keep saying system, structure, formula, process. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like in a second. But just keep in mind that when I say that, it's something that you can implement that's really going to skyrocket your levels of conversion without even talking about like closing or negotiating or anything like that. Like that's important, but just having something that you can follow like a roadmap is the first place that you want to start. So I have a time check real quick.
Yeah, you got 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I heard this, and I want to preface with this. When I first started, it's the 20-60-20 rule. And I was told, I don't know if this is statistically true, but it doesn't really matter because it's just an example, that 20% of customers will never buy when they come in, 20% will always buy, and you have the opportunity to convince 60% to buy. So this is where your skill and your professionalism comes into play, and you can sway this to 80% and then the 20% always leaves. Now, I would say and argue that you would actually be much better off just treating it like this, where you have 20% that are always going to buy and 80% that you can convince to buy. And you don't even think about the fact that there's 20% that are never going to buy. And even though it's not necessarily actually true, it doesn't matter. If you can just pretend that it's true and you act based off the assumption that this is the reality, you're going to have much better results overall. And an analogy that I want to make here is gun safety. So if you have a firearm, you never want to point it at another person. Like we're all taught that. If you've ever shot guns, that's like the first thing they tell you. Even if it's empty, you never point it at another person. You just always pretend like the gun is loaded and everyone's safe if you do it that way, right? Which ignores the reality, which is that an empty gun is actually completely safe, objectively. If you don't have any rounds in the gun, you can point it at somebody, they're never gonna get hurt, nothing's gonna go off, you can't shoot someone if there's no bullets in it, right? But we ignore that reality and we pretend it's not even true. It's not even in the picture of how we treat the firearm, because the new reality that we've come up with, which is the gun is always loaded, even if it's not. We always say the gun is loaded, we act as if that's true. That gives us much better results overall. It reduces the likelihood of something negative happening and it increases the likelihood of something positive happening. So we act as if it's true. And these two examples is what I want to preface with, because as I talk about kind of the system, the framework here, don't fall into the trap. And this is true for any kind of advice you would get when management's talking to you across the board. Don't fall into the trap of using an exception to negate the rule, basically. So if you are listening to what I'm saying or to anybody else, and you think, oh, well, there's this one situation that doesn't fit into that, so I'm just going to throw the whole thing out. Like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and you don't want to be doing that. You'll just end up shooting yourself in the foot if you kind of go down that road, no pun intended. And so the best thing you can do is just adopt a framework that you apply across the board just uniformly as like, this is the rule, this is what I'm going to follow in every situation, and then you just deal with the exceptions as they come up, and you're going to be a lot better off. Again, that'll cause you to increase the likelihood of something good happening and decrease the likelihood of something bad happening, which is making a sale, losing a sale, right? So I want to talk about forms of contact. Kendall and most dealerships have a few different ways that they reach out to customers: mail, email, text message, phone calls, and then face-to-face. And this is basically all the ways that you can get in touch with somebody. I'm not going to talk about mail today. I mean, there's a place for it, but it's not going to be super relevant to you guys right now. And so this is basically all the ways that you're currently interacting with your customers, at least in terms of communication. I've organized this in a really particular way. So this is going from coldest and slowest to hottest and fastest in terms of communication. So email being literally the slowest form, it takes longer to get replies back. And by cold and hot, I just mean likelihood to transact. So how likely are they to buy a car, like soon? If you're talking to them face to face, that person's very likely to be in a position where they're going to buy a vehicle from you, versus if you're texting them or emailing them, they're probably a little bit further away. And again, don't think about the exceptions here when I say this next part. The best way to view any time you're interacting with a customer anywhere with any form of contact is just as tools to get to the next form of contact. So when you're emailing a customer, your only focus should be on collecting a phone number or setting an appointment. When you're on the phone, your only focus should be setting an appointment. When you're texting somebody, your focus should be getting on the phone with them or setting an appointment. So you're just moving down the list with these. And I know that some customer, you got push deals, right? Some people really prefer one or the other. Don't use the exception to negate the rule. Okay, the gun is always loaded, right? So you want to, through all of what you're doing throughout the day, treat it like this, and you're gonna have a higher level of success. Now, this isn't where it stops. So this is just the kind of big picture, how we're talking to people. Put this to the side for a second, and we'll just say email, text, phone, and appointment, or face-to-face. So appointment is where we begin with people in person. This is where we lead into the steps of the sale. And this is where the system, the process, the framework comes into place that I mentioned. Mojo talks about this all the time. I heard you say steps of the sale, I don't know how many times when I was on the floor. But I never actually saw it written out in a way that made a lot of sense to me. And so this is what I kind of came up with. Appointment is the first step. Step 0 is what I like to call it. And then you have your greeting. And there's a lot of different variations of this. You'll hear people say kind of different steps. I narrowed it down to what I feel like is just the bare bones, basic things that you can't skip. So greeting, fact-finding, selection, presentation, appraisal for trades, negotiation, close, delivery, follow-up. Follow-up. So this is what I mean by framework. This is the system. This is the process. A lot of salespeople that I work with are only really working with like this part of it. So I don't really think about the importance of the appointment as actually being part of the process. This communication kind of waterfall leads straight in to the steps of the sale. So when you're going through the email, text, phone process, you're just working towards getting in person. Your only goal, no matter where you are with any customer, is just to get further down the list. You don't have to worry about what you're doing next except for what's coming up next. And that'll make things way simpler, way easier as you kind of go about your job. The advantage to having something like this in place versus selling by accident, like I said at first, is that before I even meet a customer in person, I know exactly where I'm going with them and exactly how I'm going to get there with them. And that sets you up for success in a way that you don't have if you can't at any point in your interaction with a customer point it to exactly where you are that moment and exactly where you need to be going next, you're just lost. Like, this is the difference between leading a horse by the reins and just having it like running around and you're getting dragged behind it and kind of flapping in the wind, right? So order taker versus professional. And we're in car sales, not fast food, right? So you don't want to be an order taker. This is the difference between that. And as long as you can know exactly where you are, you have your roadmap for where you need to go next. So same thing like the forms of communication. You're just focusing on getting to the next one to advance the deal forward. The same goes for all the other steps. So when I'm saying hi to my customer and I'm greeting them, I'm not selling them a car, right? I'm not showing them a vehicle. When I'm doing my fact finding, I'm not picking anything out yet. I'm just asking them questions about their problems and where they need to be and what they're trying to solve. When we're picking out a vehicle, we're not test driving every vehicle on the lot. We're just choosing one. Okay, when I'm on a test drive, I'm not talking about numbers and negotiating and closing. I'm just test driving the vehicle. I'm just building value, and so on and so forth. So you want to actually follow them sequentially, and that way you're not skipping ahead, because if you say hi to someone and you're immediately starting to talk about numbers down here, you've skipped all of this, and your likelihood of losing that person is so much higher.
That's good.
Yeah, and again, you don't want to, there's always going to be situations that you got to like roll with and just play ball as they come up. but overall, you should be approaching every interaction with some sort of framework in mind. And this is a big part of where things get lost. So as I was thinking about, okay, if you think there's spillage going on, to use your words, the bucket is leaking essentially. So you've got a bunch of water flowing into your bucket. There's a hole in the bottom and a lot of it's just pouring out. That's the picture you kind of painted for me. I was thinking, okay, where in this process is it happening? I think you guys have a strong enough structure around you, like a great management team, you got good coworkers. Everything is kind of set up automatically to where even if you are kind of selling by accident, you're getting walked through most of this just because of the way that the system is set up downstairs. So where does this land on your shoulders that it's like falling apart? Because it's got to be somewhere, right? You'll notice that there's a shape to this. So it's a circle, not to get too elementary, but the thing about circles is they don't have an end point. So at nowhere in this process is a customer leaving. Okay, it just repeats. Once, and there's two ways that people come in. So you have leads. This would be like inbound traffic through walk-ins, phone ups, etc. And then you have your prospecting, which is outbound. So if you're making calls and getting people in, this is how you add people to the circle, and it just grows. People can only come in and they don't come out. And this is where I think it's falling apart. So you could tell me if this is true. A lot of the kind of day-to-day process or the way that you're winning right now, my guess would be that you show up to work, you wait for ups, you get ups, you sell ups, and then you just wait for more ups. Okay, and then the next day, you show up to work and you wait for new ups and you sell ups and you wait for more ups. And it's just like, that's it. So you're living like paycheck to paycheck with ups, if that makes sense. So you're just like, whatever comes in the door that day is what you eat and live on. And it's just like these blocks. And that's how you're going about your business. What you're doing is you're cutting this entire step out of the process, and all of your customers are coming in and just disappearing into the ether. And there's no closed system here. You are just bleeding money out the end, if that's what you're doing. Because you're losing everything if they don't actually make it all the way. Actually, even if they do make it through, let's say you get through delivery, congratulations, check mark, you made a closed sale and a commission, you're still losing those people because they're leaving your loop and they're just gone if you're not keeping them inside. So your circle doesn't grow, it's more of a line. Perfect. So how do we fix that and close the circle? Well, that missing piece is follow-up. So this is actually, it's not outside of the process, this is part of the cycle. So steps of the sales cycle. Because most customers buy a new vehicle every, 2 to 5 years? And so they're gonna be coming back. At some point, if you continue the follow-up, they're gonna end right back up here at appointment. So do you see how this works? And one thing to keep in mind, every customer you've ever interacted with is always somewhere on the circle. They're always gonna be at one point in the process and never like outside of it if you're doing your job right. Okay, so there's no exceptions to this. Even if someone's like doesn't buy a car from you and leaves, they're just ending right back up here. And you just work them. And eventually they're gonna be back in the market and they're gonna be buying another car, and then you bring them right back to an appointment and it starts all over again. And greeting, fact-finding, selection, presentation, etc. So the way to close the loop and the circle, and hopefully this isn't where I lose some of you guys, but the CRM is your secret to that. So Mojo warned me that he said, if you bring up the CRM, it's gonna sound like rocket science to some people, and it's boring. I know that, but this really is the secret. The problem is that our human monkey brains don't have enough processing power to handle the kind of volume and structure that's required to run a six-figure business. Now, you guys are the exception to the rule, where you're in such a good situation that you don't necessarily have to do anything like this and you'll still make the money just because it's being poured all over you. But you've got holes all over your bucket if you're not following it. You could be making so much more. And that's not even talking about the second pillar, which is mobilizing. Without even having this extra stream of prospecting involved, and you're just getting inbound leads, and you're leaking it everywhere, you're still making six figures. which is ridiculous that you're in that situation, but you are. Imagine how much better it would be if you could just close the loop, capitalize more on what you're already getting, which is a huge amount of business from what I'm being told. And then later on, you could even add in prospecting and just double your stream of income up top too, and then it's really starting to skyrocket. You will only be able to keep track of like 5 to 10 people at a time, and even then, you'll probably be forgetting stuff and like letting things slip through the cracks. So you have to use the technology that's been given for you. The CRM is like a magic piece of technology for salespeople. It's literally built from the ground up to be the perfect tool for you. It's completely customized. It's boutique, right? People have come in and analyzed our exact process, our exact system, and built this in such a way that it has all of the tools designed for this industry and this store. So if you're neglecting it, you're leaving so much on the table. I know I'm gonna run out of time, so I'll give the real quick kind of CRM checklist. Every single person should be going into the CRM, and you need to have follow-up scheduled for all of them. And that's how you keep the loop closed. So when I say every single person, it's like if you chat with somebody through their window on the lot for like 2 minutes, if you can get contact information from somebody, they go in and they have follow-up scheduled. And just to illustrate this real quick, I remember a time when I saw like a gray Tundra driving outside. I ran out to meet him. He rolled down the window, said all he was looking for was a red Platinum Tundra. I said, great, we had no inventory at the time. This was when the lot was empty. Why don't you come inside? We can look at some deposits, right? Just trying to move him a little bit closer to the steps of the sale. He said, no, I really don't want to come inside. I just wanted to see if you had one. You don't have one. It's fine, I'll see you later. I said, hold on a second, let me get your phone number. At least let me tell you when we do get one. And so I got his phone number. He let me have it. First thing I did when I came back, I put him in. I set follow-up. All I did was make a task for the next time we had an allocation, which was like a month and a half out because I knew when we were getting them. All I had was just check inventory. I completely forgot about this guy because you guys are probably working with 3 or 4 people a day, maybe, depending on how busy you are, between phone ups and internet leads and people that are texting you back and old customers and walk-ins. And stuff like this is just gone if you don't save it. It just disappears completely. It's off the list and who knows where it goes. Someone else gets it when they come in eventually, or there's no way to tell what happens to them. I put a task for check inventory. We get an allocation, no red Tundras. So I just bump the task to the next month and the next month. Every time it comes up, I've completely forgotten who this guy is. I just see it in my work plan. I read my own notes to remind myself, oh, this guy's looking for a red Platinum Tundra. No idea who he is. I trust myself from a month ago that I put in accurate notes. And I think I did this for 6 months. We finally got a red Tundra on the ground. Again, I sat down at my desk. It came up. No idea who this guy is. Red Tundra. I look outside. Oh, there's a red Tundra. I call him. Hey, you were here 6 months ago. I don't remember who he is, but I'm just riffing. Why don't you come in? We have a red Tundra that you told me that you wanted. And he showed up. He traded his gray Tundra. And I think I made like $3 grand on that deal. So that always stuck with me because it was like my biggest commission for the month. And it was such an easy thing to do. It was like a complete layup. But if I hadn't been checking and following up, there's no way in hell I would have remembered 6 months later that this random guy driving through the lot was going to buy a vehicle and make me that much money.
5 minutes.
Perfect. So this is your secret weapon to make sure that you're capitalizing on all those opportunities. And if someone does come into the store, let's say you get down to the test drive and then they decide they want to leave, right? All of these other steps just feed right back into follow-up. If you end early in negotiation, let's say you can't close them, they just cycle right back into here and you just keep working them. So when they leave the store, if you're not calling them like later that day or you're not calling them the next day, that's why you're having spillage. And because I have 5 minutes left, I'll end it here, but there's so much more that I could talk about in terms of expanding on each of these. Every single step has like a whole laundry list of things that you should be doing to kind of capitalize and improve on your rates with all of them. There's tricks to setting appointments on the phone. This is a whole skill on its own. We didn't even get to the second pillar, which is prospecting, and that's how you like double, triple your actual lead flow if that's something that you're having a problem with. So, and this is where the pitch comes, I talk about all of that. So I am doing initially, I just started this, but one-on-one coaching for kind of my first foray into this whole endeavor. I'm only doing 12 spots because I want to have enough time and also still work on the business. And if I'm doing one-on-one sessions, that's all I can fit in. We have 2 closed and probably 1 more as of this morning, although that one's still pending. So let's just call it 9 spots left. You can apply for a call on my website, which is spanosolutions.com. Or you just catch me after and then I'll talk to you. Otherwise, I have a free training group that I give all this stuff away in as well. And if you join that, we'd love to have you in there. It's skool.com. So SKOOL/six-figure car sales. Six-figure car sales /about. So this is like a community platform. I'll have training posted up in there. I make a bunch of videos and do a weekly live training call, and we do like role plays and kind of go over some of this stuff there too. And then this is for one-on-one coaching, and I think that's about it. I'll do 20% off for Kendall people as well. And there it is. All right.
Thank you. All right, let's give him a hand.